Good afternoon, everyone. In the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get started as folks are joining us. My name is Stacey Albanese, Associate Director of Alumni Engagement and Annual Giving. Thank you for joining us on this afternoon's webinar, How to Ace Phone and Video Interviews. Again, my name is Stacey Albanese, and on behalf of the Office of Annual Giving and Alumni Engagement, services to offer webinars such as this to both our students and alumni. Through our online community, Montclair Connect, you can view previously recorded career webinars and workshops, digitally archived events, and more. While you're there, you can set up your alumni Gmail account, print your alumni ID card, view the calendar of upcoming alumni events, and search the alumni directory. To learn more about this and some other great benefits and services, I invite you to
Okay, thanks, Stacy. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Ace Phone and Video Interviews. My name is Adam Mayer, and I'm the Director of Career Development in the Center for Career Services at Montclair State University. Today, we'll cover an overview on phone and video interviews. Before you actually meet an employer face-to-face, it's likely you'll encounter either one or both of these modalities. We'll address 6 tips to incorporate for these increasingly common interview approaches. You will have the opportunity to submit questions by typing them into the questions pane. You can send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will collect these and address them as time permits. So let's get started. So the first type we'll look at of the two is phone interviews. Now, many of us might be familiar with these. They come with their own set of challenges as well as benefits. This came about years and years ago, this sort of interview with employers who wanted to save money. They didn't have to send travel arrangements for somebody to come on site. And it was a quick and easy way to sort of get to know somebody with very little logistical concerns. So the phone interview itself, let's take a look. So we'll look at 6 different tips for phone interviews. The first, it might seem odd, but wear what you would to a face-to-face interview. So that said, you want to wear a suit, suit and tie, wear a pantsuit. So what this eventually does is clothing certainly can influence our mindset as well as our state of consciousness. And if we think about, when the last time was that we had dressed up, say for a wedding or for a social event, maybe a reunion, something along those lines, when we tend to dress up, we tend to think differently. And in a good way, that tends to be something that puts us in a good light. So you typically want to do that sort of thing. That having been said, the cool thing about wearing, say, your suit or outfit is that no one can see you. And that kind of leads us to the second piece, is what they call state-dependent memory. So it's a lot of words, but briefly, memory retrieval is easier when the same state of consciousness exists while the memory was formed. So what this actually means is, so if you're wearing your interview outfit over the phone, again, nobody can see what you're wearing, so that you are more likely to remember things during that interview when you go to, say, the video interview or the face-to-face interview, because you'll be wearing the same thing. It's a state-dependent memory. So an example might be, I'm on a phone interview, and this actually happened years ago, and an individual, when I was asking them questions, the interviewers themselves, I asked them, what is it that you like about working at this university? And one of the interviewers talked about, it was a Division I school and how some of the soccer games were going on later that week and they were going to attend them. So when later I ended up interviewing further down the line, I recalled, again, I was wearing the same outfit, the same interview attire, and I recalled that that individual was into soccer in particular. So I asked him about, how was the soccer season going, that kind of thing. So again, by wearing what you would do a face-to-face interview puts you in a mindset of remaining professional, remaining alert, and sometimes state-dependent memory can come into play, again, based on what we're wearing. Again, maybe just a little bit of history with that is that some studies had shown that students, individuals who studied for exams, if they were drinking coffee, they were more likely to retrieve their memories, what they'd learned, if they drank coffee during the actual exam itself. So it's a little trick. Sometimes that can work. So that's the first phone interview tip. The second is use a landline and a dedicated space. Now, I know most of us don't really get too close to the landline anymore. Some of us don't even have them anymore. But if you can, avoid cell phone use if possible. We all know, my connectivity is not so good, or, the cell tower is not, close enough. It's a dropped call. These are all not ideal situations. So if we can do a landline, cool. But if you know your location and you've never had a drop call, you've always had solid, transmission of sound, then you can use a cell phone. But if not, again, the fail-safe would be a landline. The second piece there is throughout your job search, whether it's a phone interview, a video interview, or maybe a follow-up to a face-to-face interview, we want to make sure at all times that our voicemail message is professional and space for messages must be available. So while it's sort of the default, say on our cell phones, you have reached, and they give the number itself. That's okay, but to be more professional, hello, you've reached the voicemail of, certainly insert your name, please leave a brief message, and I'll be sure to get back to you as soon as possible. Something like that. It's your voice, it's personalized. The caller knows that they've reached you. So it's just sort of a more professional way to go. The other is space for messages must be available. There's nothing worse or something that looks unorganized or untimely, especially if an employer is making decisions on either hiring or asking people to come in for other interviews, and they cannot leave a voicemail because there's no room to do that. We've all encountered that this voicemail box is full. That's kind of annoying. So we want to make sure that the voicemail is solid, professional, and that there's room for that individual to leave a message. So the final piece with number 2, in addition to trying to use a landline, you want to use a dedicated space because we want to eliminate distractions. Now we're going to watch a brief video on an individual from the BBC, and some of you may have seen this video before. This is not a dedicated space. There's distractions. There are 2 of them. They're very cute children, very unassuming, but things quickly go awry. And all right, so let's take a look at that. It's pretty funny.
Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do.
Back. Number 2.
Pardon me.
That's right, carry on.
My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies.
It's not over yet. Almost done.
Sorry. South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited.
So obviously, a dedicated space is something we want to pursue. We never want to get in that situation. So tips 3 and 4, let's take a look at those. Number 3, have the job description, your resume, LinkedIn profile, employer website, etc. viewable. Now this, that first bullet there, this is not cheating. This is research with style, right? I'm not being flippant here. This is one of the benefits of a phone interview. You can have these materials, these resources available to you right then and there, right in front of you. So there's less you certainly don't have to remember if you have it there, and that can be, I'm not saying it's a crutch, but I am saying it's a wise idea to sort of have this stuff for yourself. So typical question an employer might ask us, why should we hire you? Why are you qualified for this position? If you have the job description and your resume in front of you, you can draw parallels between what they need and what you offer. And that's a great way to answer both of those two questions, again, which are very common. Having your LinkedIn profile up, if you have it on a tablet, your phone, if you have a second laptop, maybe you got 2 monitors, something like that can be pretty cool. Reason being, it's likely that the employer is looking or has looked at your LinkedIn profile. Some studies or research has suggested that 93% of employers are Googling us in the job search, and our internet footprint is always so important. And if we are on LinkedIn, typically on that first Google results page, our LinkedIn profile, if it's been searched properly, is one of the top 5 results regarding that search the employer is likely to make. So having the employer website up, you could check out any research that they've done, awards, their mission, products, services. Again, all this stuff can be at your disposal. The second bullet under number 3, if you do have paper, you want to make sure that you have all that stuff listed in a cohesive manner. You don't want to do that, right? I call that the manila shuffle. That's where, you're just summing through the materials, certainly, and it just makes it that much more difficult and distracting to get through. So moving forward, number 4, in terms of phone interview tips, let the phone ring twice, then answer the phone using your name. This seems super simple, but I've been on a ton of search committees where we've interviewed people for positions over the years, and that first bullet, if this is done poorly, it can be incredibly awkward. Some folks let the phone ring a ton of times, some pick it up right away. Again, connectivity issues, sometimes stuff goes south. And you do need to answer using your name. So we've called people and they say, hello, or hello, whatever it is, that kind of thing. And it's just like, did we dial the right number? Is this the right person? We're not sure how all that stuff, tends to go. So let the phone ring twice, answer using your name. And when you do that, it sets a strong first impression, and that can set a great tone for the rest of the interview for both you and the interviewer. So saying something like, 2 rings, good morning, Reese Fontazzi speaking. And then they know they've gotten to the right person. So the final 2 tips for phone interviewing. When interviewers introduce themselves, write down their names and use them when answering questions. Now, if you have only one person, that's pretty easy. So if you have more than one, that can be tricky, but it's instrumental toward making a lasting impression. Reason being, people like to hear their names. It shows that you're genuine, that you're authentic, that you're engaged, and it's a great way to sort of reflect. So if an employer has asked you a question and it's a particularly difficult question, you could say, that's a difficult question, Jack. I appreciate that. Is there a different way you can ask me that question? That technique, of course, we've used their name, establishes connection. Here too, it gives us a little time possibly to come up with an answer rather than something that doesn't work right off the bat. So if the question's rephrased, it may give us an extra chance. What else? So with their names, it's just something to use. So here too, that second bullet, what you want to do, I've seen people do this in terms of preparation, because we do mock interviewing sometimes, and that's something we'll get to later. But they'll draw a shape, whether it's an oval, a rectangle, or otherwise, and they'll write down the search committee's names, the multiple interviewers' names, as they introduce themselves in the beginning of the interview. Sometimes it helps to visualize these individuals. Sometimes the questions that they ask will go in a certain order. Sometimes they won't. But if they do, you can sort of calculate that and then use their names as you begin to answer your question or their questions. So you could say something like, oh, I see, Faye. What you're asking me about is the last time that I was a leader, what was my role and how did I handle that? Is that accurate? Reflecting content, again, using their name. So what else? Number 6, don't be long-winded. Give interviewers a chance to probe and interrupt you, rather, if necessary. Because it's not a visual medium, we don't have body language to gauge people's attentiveness. So a great way to do that is to use the STAR technique, and this goes for any interview. Video, phone, face-to-face, STAR. I know it sounds cheesy, be a star, right? But it does help. I've used this years ago, and it was particularly effective. So S is for situation, T is for task, A is for action, and R is for result. What's nice about this sort of modality on the phone interview is once you get to R, you know you're done with your answer, and that gives interviewers a chance to probe. Certainly that could hold true with any of the others, but this one in particular sort of sets the rhythm, the sort of music to the conversation, which leads us to the final bullet there is make sure the interview is a conversation. It's a give and take, two-way street, right? If it's not a conversation and it's really just transactional, boom, here's the question, boom, here's the answer. Question number 2, answer number 2. Whatever it is, it's kind of, it's not organic. So again, it should be a conversation by using people's names, by pausing, by giving them a chance to speak. That's when the conversation really happens, and that's something we want to pursue. So let's see. Moving on to video interviews. These are certainly visual, right? We see that these are very, very common now today. If somebody's going to use, all the different things, whether it's Google Hangout or video, any of these things, FaceTime. I know at one point we were having a video interview, and the service we were using might have been Skype, and whoever it was, either the interviewer or the interviewee, we weren't able to connect with them, so they called us back using FaceTime, and we just passed the phone around. I mean, it was a tough circumstance, but we made it work. So 6 tips here. The number 1 thing, this is absolutely critical. Look at the camera, not the screen. Most job seekers make this mistake, and in particular, looking at the screen. Now, when you're answering an interviewer's question, you want to look at the camera, because then it looks like what? You're giving the impression of eye contact. And that is, it's huge, you know it. So good, it's a way to connection. And if I look at the screen, it looks, honestly, on the other side, it looks like I'm looking down. And that, that's not the tone we want to set. So again, look at the camera, not the screen. And just like anything else, before you have people over to your place, what do you tend to do? You clean up, just like this with the camera. And then bullet number 2 under 1 is be sure that the lens is clean, because you're inviting people over to your side, your neck of the woods, and having that sort of clean environment is the way to play it. Number 2, people don't go and run a 5K typically, or for sure not a marathon without training, without practicing. So number 2, practice mock interviews over Skype, video, Google Hangout, whatever the modality that works for you, and shoot from the shoulders up. That's probably the best way to do it, and we'll look at an example. Otherwise, it can be weird. If you're just a head, looks like you're a floating head. There's so many ways that this can go wrong. It's like you're producing your own little movie or video there. So with number 2, you want to become comfortable with the medium and its idiosyncrasies. That's a number of things that we'll look at. That could be lighting. That could be background. That could be the camera and how it's reflecting your image. It could be the clarity. There's a number of little different things here and there. So in order to practice, this is open to all current students and alumni. You want to utilize what's called Hire a Red Hawk. This is your career management system offered through Montclair State University. There are full-time jobs, part-time, internships, on-campus jobs, you name it, it's all in there. Your resume is reviewed and approved in the system, so you can apply for positions. You can RSVP for events such as employer info sessions, career fairs, number of different things. And in case of point of what we're talking about here is you can use the mock interview module and hire a Red Hawk. So let's look at that. So let's see. I'm logged in here. This is a screenshot. This is Hire Red Hawk. In order to get there, you're going to go to www.montclair.edu/career-services. Again, you go to montclair.edu/career-services and look for what's called Hire a Red Hawk on the main landing page. Once your account is, all set up and you're able to log in, on the left is your menu. You want to go down to Resources. This menu then opens up and you want to click on Mock Interviews. Again, our main page. Get into Hire Red Hawk, log in, click on Resources, then click on Mock Interviews. And this is the sort of page that will come up. Now, there's 20 different sort of preloaded interviews with sample questions based on industry. So in this case, this one's applied sciences. And this is where we would start an attempt. You can go through these based on major. There are a number of different options. You can go to this tab, My Mock Interviews, where you can customize and create, choose the questions that will be asked of you. And what's nice about either recommended ones or the ones that you help to create and ultimately answer the questions, once it's recorded, you can share these with friends, family members who can give you feedback, certainly in particular your career advisor. If you're a current student, you can share this with certainly anybody who's a trusted source, who's willing to give you, hey, thoughts on what's going well and what's not. So it's great because you get the nonverbal, you get the verbal, a number of different things. So again, this is Hire a Red Hawk. This is the mock interview feature. And then this ultimately is what it will look like on your screen. So here we have the virtual interviewer on the left. What's nice is, again, she's shot from the shoulder up. She looks professional. The background is good. Right, she's got a plant, some shelving, a picture. The lighting is good. Now, what's going on with this dude? That's me, by the way. It's not live, but I just a little screenshot. It's pretty awful, right? So it actually looks like I'm going to be beamed up by an alien, right? I'm going to go through the ceiling and be abducted, or of course that's ridiculous. But point is, the positioning of the webcam, the camera on the laptop is in bad shape. I don't even know where to begin. The background is terrible. Lighting obviously is awful. She's got it right. But as you do this, this is where you practice. You can figure out your best lighting, and otherwise you can see up here, this is the actual interview question. Describe your most recent experiment and how you researched it and set it up. Again, this one was under applied sciences. And once she's done asking the question, then we begin being recorded. And again, it's that preparation is key to sort of acing these interviews as they go along. So we know what not to do based on this guy right here. So again, that is Hire Red Hawk, and it's the mock interview module within that career management system. So numbers 3 and 4 in video interviews. Number 3, make sure your background is occupied but not distracting. We saw with that practice interview, she had a number of different good stuff over there. If we look at the second bullet, incorporate a window, shelves, books, a plant, basically anything unassuming that adds texture to your image. We definitely want to avoid the first one, avoid the incarcerated look, where there's nothing back there. right? You know, blank, plain background. So again, with preparation, you're going to be able to sort of create an environment that's welcoming and puts you in the best light. Number 4, we talked about eye contact before with regard to the camera itself, but you want to keep this in mind because sometimes we might do it once and forget about it, and we can't do that. So you want to continue to maintain eye contact and smile occasionally. So the first bullet, eye contact diminishes the perceived distance between interviewers and you. It's a great way, again, to establish this sort of organic conversation, you know, authentic connection. Because it's a weird thing, it's just doing these things over video or over the phone. So we want to do all we can to connect with the person or persons on the other side. Continuing with number 4, studies have shown that smiling relieves stress. That's certainly helpful in an interview situation, right? Elevates mood, so that helps us to perform better. Makes us seem successful. Certainly any employer would want that vibe from an interviewee. Helps us stay positive. Helps us look younger, okay? And smiling is contagious. So with that, in the end, people hire people who not only they think can do the job, but people they typically want to spend 40 plus hours a week with. So if we can smile, they smile, those sort of things, again, it's authentic connection. It's critical to establish these sort of things. So smile from time to time. So last 2, in terms of video interview tips, number 5, consider how lighting will affect your background. And we know from the previous slide, mock interviewing should address this concern. Do you need more or less light? Again, the prepping, that would answer that. Also consider where you'll interview and the time of day. If there's a window that's part of the area that you've designated as a safe place to do these sort of interviews, you know, is it going to be sunny that day? Do you need to close the blinds? Little things, just little things like that can help you to design and sort of create this image. And then finally, number 6, keep your body language open. Again, we know this is visual as opposed to the phone interview. And we've seen a number of different studies here. Some studies suggest 55% of communication is body language. So certainly more than half is what it is, how we hold ourselves in this physical space. 38% is tone of voice, and 7% the words spoken. And then finally with that, people are viewed as more honest when their hands are visible. So something to consider as well. Want to keep our hands on the table. So let's finish up 6 phone interview tips. Number 1, wear what you would to a face-to-face interview. Number 2, use a landline in a dedicated space. Number 3, have the job description, resume, LinkedIn profile, and so on visible to yourself. Number 4, let the phone ring twice, then answer the phone using your name. Number 5, when interviewers introduce themselves, write down their names and use them when answering questions. Number 6, don't be long-winded. Give interviews a chance to probe and interrupt if necessary. And then the 6 video interview tips, look at the camera, not the screen. Number 2, practice mock interviews. Number 3, make sure your background is occupied but not distracting. Number 4, continue to maintain eye contact and smile occasionally. Number 5, consider how lighting will affect your background. And then number 6, as we saw on the last slide, keep your body language open. So for all interviews, regardless of where they are, you want to make sure, as we said before, the interview is a conversation. There should be give and take. It shouldn't be one-sided. You know, because when it's a really good conversation, it's kind of like music. The beat changes, the rhythm, the pitch. That's when it gets really fun. Research employers, prepare questions for them. That's key. That's knowing your audience and ultimately respecting them. That's key as well. Take notes during the interview. Excuse me, whether it's a phone interview or a video interview, it's always good to take notes and then ultimately send a follow-up thank you. So, just before we finish, MSU Career Workshops, that's our handle on our YouTube channel. You can see here we have a number of different things. There's a job interviewing workshop, making the most of career services. This one's interesting, transferable skills. So this is good if you want to make a change to another industry. Keep calm and job search on, LinkedIn, cover letters, tracking systems, a number of different things. This workshop today that we just did will be there as well. And yeah, I thank you all for attending. And if there are questions, comments, thoughts, please type them in and we'll answer them.